On this episode of the Rebel Health Tribe, a podcast available at rebelhealthtribe.com, we welcome Chel Hamilton of chelhamilton.com and the Meditation Minis podcast.
Yeah, technically any guided meditation is hypnosis. And for those of you who are listening who are curious about if the stage hypnosis is real, because that's always a question I get, yes, it is very, very real. Those people really are hypnotized and they really are doing that crazy stuff.
Is this the part where you make me and Joe dance like a chicken?
Yeah,
Yes.
I was just wondering that. Yeah, exactly.
You guys have already danced like chickens, but you've forgotten that it ever happened.
Oh, so like my 20s then.
Yeah, exactly.
That's coming up.
Tribe Podcast.
Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Rebel Health Tribe Podcast. I'm Joe Rignola with Michael Roseline. What's up, Michael?
Yo, man, how's it going?
Going good. I like your pajamas.
Yeah. It's early morning today, so it's full color blast. We'll wake everybody up.
Yeah, for those of you who are not watching the video version of this, you're missing out. You should definitely go over to our website.
I'm practicing my gear for the CBD webinar
Yes.
in a couple days.
For those who don't know, well, this will be out. You'll be able to catch it on the website if you just look for the CBD webinar on the website. No matter when this episode comes out, you'll be able to watch it. So, Mike's full hippie mode.
Practicing hippie mode for the CBD webinar.
Awesome. So let's get into it. Joining us today is Chel Hamilton from Meditation Minis podcast, which is something I just started listening to myself, and it's amazing. Welcome, Chel.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
It's a pleasure. It's an absolute pleasure. So for folks who aren't familiar with you, just give a little background. Tell us what you do and why you do it.
Wow, those are really big questions. So I have the meditation podcast, which was not the original podcast idea that I had. I actually thought I was going to do kind of a group coaching call or one-on-one coaching call kind of show. My background is I'm a hypnotherapist. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing hypnotherapy since 2007 full-time, but I am a skeptical hypnotherapist in that I thought hypnosis was bullshit.
Okay.
I thought it was just, I was living in Los Angeles, I'm from the Midwest, and I thought it was just something that, my flaky friends in Los Angeles would fall for, and that smart Midwestern people would not.
That's really interesting. Wow. Okay. So go ahead. I want to get deeper into that, but you can keep going. This journey.
So with that,
I also used to think hypnotherapy was flaky nonsense, so you're not alone there, and then I did it, and it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really amazing. And I grew up in marketing and advertising, and so we could even get into like that kind of stuff about the programming that's happening all around us all the time. But I was very obviously not interested in being a hypnotherapist, so that was interesting how the universe was literally doing things like throwing a book on the floor at the bookstore and, just these crazy acts where I finally went, fine, I'm being that ass that knows nothing about something and I think I know something about it and I should probably, set my preconceptions aside and at least go investigate this thing that keeps coming up that I knew nothing about, but yet I was so resistant to.
Mm-hmm.
And, cut to now, I'm a hypnotherapist since 2007.
Awesome.
And the podcast was a little like that too, which is why it kind of comes up when somebody asks me about the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I was very hesitant to do meditations. Hello, Kitty. The cat has decided to join us.
I just heard rumblings from the puppies, so we might get barking too.
Uh-oh.
That's fine. And we have the year of the 17-year cicadas out here, so we have like I've got the windows closed so that hopefully it doesn't come in too much. But the meditation stuff was really the same. I did not want to be known as a meditation teacher. I did not feel like I'm any kind of meditation guru. Yes, I have sat proper, Buddhist meditation for some time in the past, but I wasn't doing it currently. And then finally I said, okay, you know what, let me just record a couple of episodes, see how it feels, let some people listen to it, and go from there.
Nice.
And I think because I focus it a lot on anxiety and stress, I used to get panic attacks, and I haven't had one in about 15 years. And again, I think that was just a smart move. There's a lot of stressed out people out there. I understand what it's like to have anxiety and to have panic attacks and feel like you're going to, die.
Yeah.
And I get tons of listeners who are like, oh my gosh, this has totally helped my panic attacks. This has totally helped my anxiety.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so let's unpack some of this stuff because it's pretty interesting. You started out in first of all, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Columbus, Ohio. I moved away the first time when I was 16 years old. I lived in Istanbul, Turkey for a year. I did a high school foreign exchange program.
Okay.
So I've always been kind of this adventurer.
Uh-huh.
I think I
What
get
was
that
that
from my
like?
grandmother. Oh, living in Turkey?
Yeah.
So it was really amazing. I'm 47 years old, so let's get that out of the way. That's one of the questions that people, how old are you? I'm 47. I lived in Turkey in the 80s. During that time, it was very progressive. There's this, I like to call it the cult of Ataturk, which the current ruler in Turkey is now undoing. But Ataturk was the person who took Turkey out of what we would kind of consider the Dark Ages and put them into modern times, and he said that there will be a separation of church and state, and that is why Turkey, historically, in recent history, has had this separation where their religious ideology does not rule their people, and that is changing now. And I actually saw the rise of that. They were coming into the high schools and recruiting kids from the wealthy families at, when we're in high school, we're kind of against our family, we're trying to find our own identity. Mm-hmm. And I saw several of my friends in the 80s get recruited by these fundamentalist groups and saw the change in them, like in weeks, where, they couldn't talk to us anymore because we're Americans, and they couldn't talk to girls, and it was just really bizarre. But very
it sounds
smart
eerily
if you're
similar
talking about
on,
marketing.
Military recruiters prowling the hallways in American high schools.
Sure.
Anyways,
Yeah.
sorry if that offends anybody.
Absolutely.
I just see a parallel there.
Mm-hmm.
Kids who are 17 and 18 and 16 and whatever, I just think it's crazy that they're expected to be, on one hand, mature enough to make these potentially life-altering decisions, and on the other hand, can't buy a beer at the store.
Yeah. Can't drive a car.
But anyway, so you were there in the 80s. There was just a failed coup in Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, there was, and we don't need to get into that. But
do you still follow Turkey politics and current events?
I have Turkish friends, and what has happened recently in Turkey is probably the demise of their secular belief system, separating church and state, and it's going to become very problematic. This is a country that was I don't know if it still is the only, but for a long time was the only country that has Islam as its major religion that was also a member of NATO.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And they don't have the rules like Saudi Arabia has. Saudi Arabia will behead people.
Oh, lots of them right in the middle of the street.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
was there for a year, so it was definitely life-altering.
Yeah. That doesn't make the news here, though, those beheadings in Saudi Arabia. That doesn't make the news.
Or the stonings of women in the streets. Right. They don't talk about that here either when they do that, because Saudi Arabia is our friend. But
exactly.
anyways, so that was like junior-ish year of high school, and then you came back and finished high school in an American high school after being in Turkey?
Yeah, which was even crazier, because you come back and everything has changed. Your perceptions about the entire, and I lived there when we bombed Libya, I should probably say. So that was a whole other thing too, to see the information, even though Turkey was our friend and very much our friend, to see the information that we were getting in Turkey about Libya and that bombing scenario versus what the people that I was talking to in America were saying about it. wholly different stories.
Yes. Yeah, amazing how that happens. So what was the story in Libya? That was it more? I imagine it was more true than what we were getting here in the United States.
Probably more true. You know, they were talking about how obviously Gaddafi was crazy. They could look at videos of him talking and say, you know, he's lost his marbles, but also that the United States put him in charge and that they were playing all kinds of little games, and this idea that, you know, he was a crazy person, so let's go in and destroy the whole country was a bit extreme. And
well,
they took out the infrastructure.
And they did. To come.
Right.
That could very well be. They took out the infrastructure, right? So rather than taking just Gaddafi out, they took out all the infrastructure so that the people of Libya couldn't have the things that they needed to have to survive and thrive.
Yeah, well, how else are you going to pay for the war machine if you're just going to target one person?
It's got to be big budget. It's the same concept as when I grew up and lived in Chicago, and the roads are always under construction. Like literally, it's always construction season on the highways in Chicago. And I asked people about that a few times once I got older and noticed that everywhere I drove was under construction. And I had friends who were in the unions and did the construction work and whatever. And if they don't spend their budget, say in fiscal year 2010 for construction, they get a smaller budget in fiscal year 2011, which means that there's less money going around. So they just find ways to make construction and build things and do unnecessary things so that they continue to get the same size or bigger budget. I think our war situation runs on a similar dynamic.
Probably, but yeah, we can't afford to send kids to college or...
Yeah, let's not get too crazy.
All right, yeah. So anyway...
Jill always chimes in on my crazy political rants on Facebook. This is a safe place we're in right now.
It can go in any direction, this podcast. But so you come back from Turkey, and was there this urge for you to tell people what you learned, particularly in that sort of the bombing of Libya, and like, no, it's not what you're being told, and what people sort of, particularly I can imagine from the Midwest and the Midwest of America.
Yeah, that part was really more challenging, and they warn you that the coming back part is harder because you think it's going to just be how it was, and it's not, because you've changed.
Right.
And so when I was listening to my two best girlfriends have conversations about parties they had been to and people they had met, and you know, this boy that they dated, and their lives just continued identically to where we had been, right? But now there's some new names in there that I didn't know. And to me, like, talking about that stuff just seemed ridiculous at that point. Like, wow, we're going to talk about what we're going to buy at the Express this weekend? Like,
you know what's happening in the world?
Yeah, it's just, there's a lot deeper things to be concerned about. And I think that I had always been towards that, like wanting to explore things, or else I wouldn't have applied to go to the, you know,
sure,
to do the exchange in the first place, right? Yeah. So there's a predisposition to that, but at the same time, I think that there's the ability to grow into it as well. And it certainly wasn't what I expected. It was definitely transformative, because it showed me that my perceptions are given to me 9 times out of 10. They are not truly my perceptions. They are based in the information that is fed to me in my environment.
And it's true for everyone. You know, people don't even realize that we don't really have our own thoughts.
No. And that sounds crazy to say, but you know, it's totally true. If you go to a completely new place and you have new information coming into you, you stay there for a year and then you go back to your old place, everything changes.
That's what seems foreign. You come back and home seems foreign.
Yes. Yes, and I was like, who are all of these light-haired people? I've never seen such light-haired people in my life.
Right.
I found that to be true after just traveling for a few weeks. I can't fathom being in such a radically different place for a whole year and coming back to a high school of all places where it's like the epicenter of ridiculous nonsense that doesn't matter. And I mean, Wow. And for kids now, I mean, that's amplified exponentially now versus the 80s, like how distant kids in high schools are to things like world events and
Right.
which is terrifying. But
not all kids.
not all kids, no.
True.
But
True. Yes. Absolutely.
the internets, you would think the internets would have pushed us towards a much more place of knowledge because there's everything at our fingertips, but I don't know how much that's actually happened.
Instead, we're chasing around electronic Pokemon.
Yes.
We're using the internet. It's brilliant. Watching cat videos.
But at least they're getting outside with Pokemon.
That's true. That is a good point. That is a good point. So you finish out of high school back in the Midwest.
Yeah.
Somewhat of a struggle, I would imagine, at that point. And then you, where did you go to high school, to college?
I bounced around high schools. Bounced around colleges. I dropped out like every time.
Okay. What was your first major?
Something in fine arts, I'm sure. I don't know if it was never drawing, but it might have been photography or theater arts, or ceramics was one of them. Landscape architecture was another one. And then I finally settled at OU 10 years later, so in my late 20s, and went to school for playwriting and screenwriting. And from there, I moved to Los Angeles for a while.
Oh, that all makes sense now. So so your first passion was art of some sort, writing or some sort of art?
Yes, I've always been what I call now a creator maker. And it's whether it was, this or that, it didn't matter the medium. I always just was interested in creating something new that didn't exist before.
Awesome. Okay. And were your parents supportive of that, or was it more like you should get a real job?
A little bit of both. I had interesting parents in that both of them at one time or another completely worked for themselves, which was not the norm in the 70s through the 80s. My grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was actually a lawyer for the United States government in the 40s.
That's unheard of.
Yes. We have pictures of her in Hawaii. I recently was reading through some of the notes, and I realized that my grandmother had 3 or 4 male suitors and finally decided on my grandfather.
Well, that's awesome.
Good deal for him.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes, it was. He was a bomber pilot and promised her she would see the world.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, so a little unusual. Yes, they want me to be safe. They want me to, be healthy and well and all of that. But at the same time, I think both of my parents always understood. My dad came from an art background. That's where the advertising and marketing comes in. That we also have to do what makes our hearts sing. And if that means that, you do something and you live in a smaller apartment because that affords you that luxury, then do that.
Right. Oh wow, that's really supportive actually. That's great.
Yeah. So I was never pushed to have the 2 kids and live in the suburbs.
Oh, that's awesome. So what kind of art was your dad into?
He was a printmaker originally and then went into graphic design and advertising in order to care for his family.
Sure.
And I think he won lots of awards, but his one, which for the Midwest is pretty good, his biggest claim to fame, I think, is that he was the first person to ever put one of those scratch-it stickers on the outside in an envelope in a direct mailer campaign. It was a little strawberry scratch and sniff.
Brilliant.
That is brilliant. That's so cool.
I had a book of those, Popeye book as a kid. It was like a little flip book, and
Popeye?
Yeah, Popeye. It was like a Popeye book, and it was all scratch and sniff. He had the can of spinach, and if you scratched it, it smelled like greens. If you whatever, and one of them that was
smelling good.
They tweaked them, whatever. And there was one in there that recently, the last few years, when I discovered, turmeric and all the stuff that turmeric does, and I started to use it in my food or whatever. One of the scratch and sniffs, because smell is highly emotional. Olfactory nerves go right to the part of the brain in the limbic system which controls emotion. So that's why when we smell something that reminds us of childhood, it's way more of a flashback to being a kid or whatever you were experiencing or whatever feeling, like grandma's house or whatever thing. Also negatives too, like smells can be extremely negative, but like it always triggers an emotion way more than a visual memory does, or like, you know, this tennis ball could or whatever. And so I smelled this turmeric the first time I had it, and one of the scratch and sniffs from this Popeye book was turmeric. It must have been like, it smelled like it was the exact same smell, and I was like transported to being a little kid, having this cool book that I totally forgot that I had, and yeah, scratch and that doing that I'm sure was huge for because mailing industry used to be like email is now.
Right.
Sure,
So if you were like a groundbreaker in the direct mailing industry, like somebody crushed a ton of sales because of that little thing.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. That was kind of his claim to fame.
That's
we
cool.
Want to get scratch and we should figure out a way to get scratch and sniff for email, like in the subject line, to increase our.
Like the computers have a little thing that mists out like a.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
That's really cool.
So that was a way for him to still have his art and make a living doing it.
Yeah, I think so. But you know, that also kind of colors my choices now, because he set that aside and didn't go back to it, and you can see that kind of lost dream. You know, we get into fear, right? So I work a lot with anxiety. I also work a lot with fear, and fear in myself too, like the fear of putting something out there in the world. Creators are constantly fighting with the fear to put something new out in the world, and I wish that he had lived his dreams a little bit more.
Yeah, I actually can relate to that too, and I think Mike and I are probably are thinking we're going to turn this into a therapy session right now, but
we try not to pounce on the skills of our guests and use their skills in our favor during the podcast.
The whole point.
Yeah, that's actually the whole point. We just lure people on we think can help us, and then we therapy them, or get therapy from them.
So my dad is an amazing jazz saxophone player, and I saw the same thing where he kind of put that aside to take care of the family. He still did it, but that was something for nights and weekends, and that's what we were told as kids. Anything that we wanted to create, or anything, any kind of art or anything creative that we wanted to do, that was a hobby.
Right.
And luckily, Mike and I have been able to kind of create this thing that we've wanted to, and follow our passion doing it. But so I could certainly relate to that, and it kind of rubs off on you a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Mm-hmm.
What did you sense, or maybe even looking back in hindsight, is that there was some resentment there, or regret on his part?
I don't know. Those aren't conversations that I think that he is comfortable having.
Sure.
Because it would probably bring up too much
at
this late stage in the game.
Of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah. So were you, when you were searching for the right college, the right course, were you torn between what you wanted to create and getting a regular job, and so that's why you bounced around a lot?
I think that I was exploring different avenues to creation to see what resonated the most, and while I love the process of writing a play, or I love the process of taking a great photograph, and I shoot on medium format, and I hand develop,
Cool.
Yeah, I'm an analog girl when it comes to that stuff.
That's awesome.
That all of that is really interesting, and I like what it does for me, but those things for me are like going to a yoga class. It's giving to me, but I don't really feel like it's giving back to the greater world in a meaningful way.
Okay.
Now, you could make the argument that if you take a great picture that can speak to somebody, but I really wanted to help people transform who they were so that they could be less anxious, more fearless, more courageous. If I could help somebody who then goes and someday solves like creating free energy for the world, that would be the most amazing person that I could ever help.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
And I don't have that science mind to do that myself, but if I could help somebody who's working towards things like that, there would be no greater gift. That would just be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I started moving into the writing more because I figured with writing I can transform a larger group of people. And then I realized that was just entertainment, and I wasn't really interested in entertainment. And that's about when the hypnotherapy thing came in. And because I think because I grew up, with a grandmother who was a lawyer, so I had to make valid arguments at a young age why this was better than that, right? I had to prove everything in my court case. And then my dad doing marketing and advertising, and it was the 70s. There was nothing subliminal about it. He would show me like what they were painting into the different bits. He's oh yeah, here's this, and I'm like, oh wow, there's nothing subconscious about it. They knew what they were doing.
Right, exactly. And it's the same today. It's just a different format.
Yes, so all of that comes together.
Yeah, the headlines on sales pages and different NLPs in the video, and it's fascinating. It's really a fascinating topic. But you did the marketing and advertising yourself for a while?
No, but because I grew up in it, it's just really natural and in my blood.
And then what made you shift from doing that into doing the hypnotherapy and that kind of stuff?
I was really sick with, I had somebody break into my car when I was living in Los Angeles, and I was on my way to my job, which was bartending. I was bartending by night and writing by day, and I had a small child. Is
that why you moved to LA to be a writer, for screenplays? And did you write screenplays? Did you actually get anything out there?
I did write. Before I moved, I was a minorly published and produced playwright. I have a book that has a monologue in it that was published with a bunch of other monologues, and I actually got a little paycheck for that. I did some ghostwriting. There's a short film, I think, on the Internet Movie Database that I co-wrote called Widowmaker.
Widowmaker?
It looks very pretty. What else? Yeah, I did some stuff.
I wrote a couple of screenplays.
Did you?
Yeah. One of them we actually sold to a small studio, actually in the Chicago area, and I don't know what happened to it after that. It never got made, as far as I know. But so that's my first passion as well, is writing, particularly screenplays.
Yeah. So that really is a lot like what I do now. Like all of it comes together, because when you're screenwriting or especially playwriting, that metaphoric storytelling. With playwriting, you can't see the kiss, you have to create the kiss in all the other bits and pieces, in the words and in the feelings. So it's a little bit different. And this hypnosis thing came up, and even though I had done some therapy as a kid, and I was not a big fan of talk therapy. But when I found out through my own experience the power that the hypnotic process has to help people change behavior now. Like, I don't really care about the past except what I'm doing now.
Right.
So let's change what's happening now so I can change what's happening later, because I can't change the past. And hypnotherapy is very focused on changing the now so that your future changes. And all of the storytelling and the convincing your own mind of arguments, all of that just fit perfectly with the training that I had my whole life.
Yeah. Wow, that's really interesting. But at first you resisted it. At first you resisted the hypnotherapy. You thought it was all woo and...
Yeah, it was all woo-woo. It was all candles and sandals, baby.
Yes. Did you have an experience with the hypnotherapist, or what was it that actually finally made you shift?
So there were, like I said, like the book fell off the table at the bookstore, lots of things like that. I'd turn around and somebody would be talking about it. Oh, I was telling the story. I got sick. Somebody broke into my car, my old 740 Volvo, and and it's nighttime. There's broken glass. I get in the car. It's a little bit sticky. They stole a CD player that had a CD stuck in it for like a year. But I lived near Koreatown, so it was probably some crackhead.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week later, I had hepatitis B.
Oh my gosh.
And it presented very acutely. Like I had the full-on jaundice like A. And I was sick for about 3 weeks with high fevers, and it was really awful. I was hallucinating a lot of the time because I'd never got that shot.
Yeah.
I'm of an age that they didn't give it back then.
Right. Oh my gosh.
So during that time, I'm like, I have to change my life. I need to. My son at that point, his dad had really dropped out of the picture, and I couldn't keep bartending. We had to do something different. And so I made a list of 5 things that different needed to look like, and 4 of them were very practical, meaning, you know, if I have to go back to school, it has to be 2 years or less of education. And when I get out of school, I have to make X amount of money. Very practical things. And the last one on the list was to help others. And I told the universe that anything that fit at least 4 of these 5 criteria, I would put on the list and investigate.
Okay.
And the hypnosis thing kept coming up, and I kept being like, no, I'm not putting that on the list. That's stupid. And finally, I threw my hands up and put it on when the book fell off the shelf.
Do you remember what book it was?
No, it's just something about you can be hypnotized. Hypnosis really big across the thing. And the next day, I'm looking around and I see that there is this school in Los Angeles called the Hypnosis Motivation Institute that offers 1 month of free classes to learn about how hypnosis works. And it was twice a week, and it was free. And so I signed up for it. And that's what changed everything.
Wow.
Cool.
So when you was it like immediate? The first class you took?
No, I was so skeptical. Even though I'm seeing the change and I'm seeing like the process, and they explain like how the hypnotic process works. The universe, in its infinite wisdom, had to actually put somebody in my class who was married to the best friend of my best friend in college in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
And she's married to him, and they live in Los Angeles now, and she's from a town an hour away in Ohio.
Oh, wow.
And we figured this out like the 3rd class or something, and we're like, oh my God, you know Celeste? How do you know Celeste? Celeste is like my best friend. I moved to LA and I lived with her for like a month getting my feet because she was my best friend in college. She's the best friend of my husband. What are you talking about?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It's funny how so many things like that happen when we're doing the things we're supposed to be doing too.
Exactly.
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, those synchronicities. So I learned, and you know, I know you guys don't want to use me for your own therapeutic uses, but I will tell you that
bring it on.
anytime that like wall, and maybe it doesn't feel like a wall for everybody. For me, it feels like this wall of oh hell no. Anytime that comes down, I have now learned that that is a sign for me to stop, take a breath, and go, well, maybe.
Yeah. Like that's not a wall. Maybe it's a gate you're supposed to walk through.
Yeah, and to just kind of stop and be like, okay, let's set aside what we think we know about this. Oh hell no, and let's just be open to the possibility of investigating it. That to me has been huge. When I look back, everything that was an oh hell no, pretty much was a oh yeah okay.
Yeah, let's do this.
Now, I haven't tried that with relationships yet. Maybe I should try that with relationships. As long as it's not the guy at the bar going, ah!
Yeah. Maybe there's still some place for hell no. Maybe that's
maybe there is. Maybe there is. You're right.
Maybe. Who knows? So once you got done with the free course, was you know, once you completely sort of surrendered to that this was a real thing, and it could help you and help people, was that it? That this was the path you were going to take? Did you take more classes? Did you do more stuff with it?
Yeah. I didn't even surrender until the last class. So my girlfriend had to walk in, and she said, I just signed up for the whole year program. And I was like, really? She's like, yep. And this is the friend who was married to my best friend in college. And so I was like, fine. And I walked down the hall, and I'm like, I'm signing up for the whole thing. It's a year-long program. It's about 800 hours of intensive hypnotherapy-specific training. And they actually offer that training online through their distance learning program as well. And you can do the month for free, I think, distance learning as well, and just learn like the process of it. So at the end of the year, I became a certified clinical hypnotherapist, and I moved to Ohio. And started my practice, and got one client, and then got another client, and then got another client, and just kept doing that.
Were you surprised by how popular hypnotherapy was back in Ohio? Was it something that was surprising to you, or?
I don't know that it's popular.
Okay.
But I do think that people every year are becoming more and more open to it.
Well, you built a successful practice, I would imagine. Is that?
Yes, I have.
And you do cool online stuff too.
I do. I have been transitioning my practice more online because it's available, right? Yeah. I have some amazing clients that I get to work with all over the world, a lot of high achievers. Like if I told you some of their names, you guys would be like, what? That's your client? And that's how I feel.
But cool.
Maybe some of them will give me testimonials at some point. But I'm like, wow, that's amazing. The power of the internet to connect with more and more people, and then the podcast was really, I wanted to help more people and do it in a free way because not everybody can afford my services. And I've had people write me these very heartfelt, I'm sure you guys get heartfelt letters as well from the podcast, and people telling me things like, I have been in therapy for 16 years for my anxiety and depression, and 1 week of listening to your podcast has done more for my anxiety and depression than 16 years of therapy.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Incredible, yeah.
And I get letters like that all the time, like from vets who have post-traumatic, and it's just, and a couple of videos, I only have a couple of videos on YouTube, but the VA in Atlanta found me about a year and a half ago and asked if I could donate some of my recordings to a research project that they are doing to help vets with insomnia and post-traumatic stress.
Wow, that's wonderful.
And yeah, it's been amazing.
What a gift that you put out there into the world. It's great.
I know, it gives me goosebumps. I'm like, my grandma would be so proud.
Yeah, of course, it's great. And you have some online. You have like a deep sleep program, right?
Yes, and that is in the process of being redone to shorten up some bits and just kind of fine tune some things. As I continue to do this work, I get better and better at it, and I'm able to do what used to take me 20 minutes with somebody in 10.
Okay.
Because you keep kind of cutting away at the excess. Right. I'm always about cutting away the excess stuff. Right. I would rather buy a book that's 75 pages, that's laser targeted, that's going to help me change my issue, than to buy something that's 300 pages.
Right. And you show, I mean, even with your podcast, you show that. I mean, your podcast is like 6, 7, 10 minutes long, and there's, you have an intro in there, and then the meditation, though, the hypnotherapy kind of session is just a few minutes long.
Yeah, I call it hypnotic meditations.
Okay, good. I like that because I was struggling with what to call it, obviously.
Yeah, technically any guided meditation is hypnosis. And for those of you who are listening who are curious about if the stage hypnosis is real, because that's always a question I get, yes, it is very, very real. Those people really are hypnotized, and they really are doing that crazy stuff.
Is this the part where you make me and Joe dance like a chicken?
Yeah,
yes.
I was just waiting for that. Yeah, exactly.
You guys have already danced like chickens, but you've forgotten that it ever happened.
Oh, so like my 20s then.
Yeah, exactly.
We just recreated my 20s in 5 minutes. No, that's cool. That was actually the stage hypnosis is the thing that made me think hypnosis was bullshit. because I was like, unless you're putting me up there and that's happening to me, I'm not believing that that's real and that these people aren't just, there was somebody in cahoots, because everyone's always out to trick you and get you, and nothing can actually be cool.
Right.
And then I did it, and it was really cool. I didn't do my homework afterwards, which I think a lot of people think that if you do like one hypnotherapy session on a phobia or a fear or like a thing you want to change, if you just do one session, you walk away and you're like healed 100% and you're fearless and all these things. She gave me a lot. Mine was over needles, a fear of like shots and needles and blood draws and things. And I came home from my first session, and my wife is a nurse, and there was a insulin needle on the table because she had accidentally brought one home in her pockets from work, and usually just seeing it would make me nauseous or clammy or turn white or whatever, and I was able to like pick it up. I pinged it with my finger. I touched the needle part, like I was totally cool. But she had given me a bunch of like little exercises to do and like things to practice and whatever to kind of build on the therapy, and I didn't do them. Sorry, Christina, if you watch this. And I noticed that my fearlessness faded a little bit, and I kind of resorted back to how I was. And I went and I did the blood donation that I was getting ready for, and it still freaked me out. I didn't pass out like I normally would have, so maybe it was a little reduced. But can you talk on that at all a little bit, like with hypnotherapy? Like, do you give people like stuff to do either in between sessions or like homework or something like that?
Yeah, so often I do give homework. I also recommend that people do typically at least 3 sessions. It depends upon the issue. For something like needles, I would definitely recommend at least 3 sessions because you want to get in there and reinforce what's working. The first time you meet with somebody, you might be able to figure out a lot of what's going to speak to them, but that first kind of space between first session and second session is going to give you even more information about how that person's brain works, so that you can reinforce what's working for them and find other ways around, what's not working yet. And with different issues, you've got different timelines. I could hypnotize somebody who, and I've done this before, who has a sugar thing, and for some people that can be magical and they never want to have sugar again. Now they might want to reboot it in a year or two, but for that year or two, no sugar at all. And for some people, it's a lifelong change. But that same person, to get them to commit to 30 minutes of exercise a day may be a longer journey of working on the bits and pieces that are causing the resistance to the change.
Interesting.
Yeah, some people talk about it's like going to the gym. If you go to the gym once and you lift some stuff, you're going to be sore, but you're not going to get any lasting benefits.
Right, unless you keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just thinking all of the things that I could probably use this for.
Yeah, when I try to explain it in this short, I tell people I'm like a personal trainer for your brain.
Nice. I like it. I'm going to go back. A couple of episodes that are really pique my interest here is the Eckhart Tolle one. Looks really good. I'm going to go listen to. And the there was a couple of relax and anxiety ones that look really good that I'm going to...
Yeah, I think we need to talk to you more in general.
Yeah, exactly. That's kind of what
we need more Chel in our life. So, and I'd love to do something with you and feature you for our people, because this is meditation, hypnotherapy. Like, a lot of people don't even realize what they're struggling with, and we give them the education, like, eat this, don't eat this, or try to go to sleep at this time and not this time. And like for me personally, and I can tell from a lot of our people who express challenges, that it's not always about knowing what to do. It's being in a position where you're able to do it. And
absolutely.
I think things on that end, like what you do, combine really well with stuff like what we do with the education, but that like we might not have the tools to help that person who's like, I know I'm not supposed to eat candy bars, but I eat a candy bar every day, and then they hate themselves for it, and then it reinforces that they have to eat the candy bar, and like breaking that cycle. Me telling them 7,000 times don't eat the candy bar isn't going to do anything.
Right, exactly.
Except make them feel more like shit about eating the candy bar.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. There's all kinds of parts of us that can create the resistance. So lots of people think about, just the fear of change. It's not just a fear of change. We all have a little 2-year-old inside of us. We have a 4-year-old inside of us. We have a 7-year-old inside of us. We have a teenager going, screw you, I'm going to do what I want to do inside of us. We have a part of us that is critical about everything. We have the part that loves to get angry. We have all these different parts, and the more parts that we have that are invested in the habit that you're trying to change, the more challenging it becomes to change that habit.
Right. So you have to go back and address all those parts of yourself?
Yes, the parts and pieces. Sometimes you're able to just make a black and white decision. Like, let's say with smoking. I don't necessarily love to work with smoking clients, and I don't as much anymore, but it is a good example for this. I really prefer working with high achievers because their problems are much more interesting to me. But once you stop smoking, you don't ever have to put a cigarette in your mouth again, so you're not triggered again. But we have to eat several times a day. So several times a day, we have the potential for the triggering to happen, which makes it a little more of a challenging problem to address because it isn't that black and white decision.
Mm-hmm. Do you have to go back and I think it's John Bradshaw that has an exercise that you almost have to say goodbye to that 2-year-old, that 4-year-old, and go back and reconcile with that part of yourself and actually say goodbye to that person. Is that?
I don't know if I agree that you have to say goodbye to them. I really like, and I use this in sessions pretty frequently, Brene Brown in one of her things. I love Brene.
She's fantastic.
Yeah, dude, amazing. She talks about how the toddler, the little kid, doesn't get to drive the car anymore. And
right.
you put them in the back seat, and they don't get the map, and they don't even get to choose the radio station. Now you do that in hypnosis with somebody, and it becomes 100 times more powerful of a metaphor.
Yeah.
And they can see that little self back there who's, wanting to stuff their face with the candy bars and such, and they're cared for, they're safe. You might have another self in the car, like the teenager, and she gets to choose the radio because she's always got cool music going on, right? And so now you've got that little piece of you that's been wanting to stuff themselves, and they're cared for. When we overeat and when we eat the things that aren't ultimately good for us, we are looking for one of two things typically: connection or some kind of biochemical change. So by putting that toddler in the seat and caring for them, you're taking care of that connection, which then makes it easier to overcome any biological, physiology little hooks that you're trying to overcome.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons why something like AA and NA can work for people, because people who are out drinking, even if they're drinking home alone, they're looking for connection. And that's probably in our anxiety age one of the biggest things. We are all dying for real connections, and it feels like we're connecting on places like Facebook, but we're really dying to be, truly connected.
That's why Facebook can be almost addicting. Because you're searching, you're not actually getting the connection, but it kind of feels like it, but you're not really getting it.
Yes, and every once in a while you do get great connections. I have met amazing people in person after having known them on Facebook for a while, but that's kind of that gaming thing, right? Where you pull the lever and you're losing a heck of a lot more than you're winning.
Yeah. Well, it's how Mike and I met, actually. So it's how we started this whole thing. So we, we hit the jackpot one time so far.
Yeah, and I've met a bunch of really cool people from social media and Facebook too. But yeah, there's definitely the other side of it, and it's maybe you should develop a thing that people can go through where they learn how to healthily use social media.
Well, first I would have to learn how to do that myself.
Figure it out yourself. Yeah.
I think the answer to that is just go outside and see people in person. I think that's probably a better way to go.
Helps.
Definitely helps. Coffee house and talk to people without a screen in between you.
Cool.
Great stuff. I mean, I feel like we could talk for hours on this, but we'll.
Yeah, I would love to have you because we do this podcast where we generally, I mean, it always goes in some strange direction, but it's generally about the guest more than it's about the thing that they know about or that they do or whatever.
Right.
So I'd love to have you back for some more content heavy, like an interview webinar situation where we can talk more in depth about, you know, what you do and maybe get some information out there that can really help people. But we do these to help our audience learn about you and about your story and why you do it, and so that when they see our friends on our interviews and webinars and things, they're like, oh, I know her, she did this, and her grandma was an attorney for the U.S. government and whatever, and it really builds that connection or that relationship that we think kind of fosters the learning process too when they have somebody on. Or when we have somebody on and they've already, quote, met them through the podcast. So it's fun. And you had mentioned you didn't really want to do a podcast or you didn't want to do a meditation thing. And podcast was something we didn't start for over a year that people were like, you guys should have a podcast. And we kind of rejected that and hesitated and whatever. And now it's ended up in like the most fun thing that we do.
Yeah. I think because we made it what we wanted to make it. These conversations, and it's not content heavy, and we don't have to really think too much. We just have to talk to people.
Yeah, we just hang out.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's kind of what I did. I just made a podcast that I would actually listen to that was meditation based, that was hypnosis as well. Like I said, all guided meditation technically is hypnosis. That might be an interesting conversation to have. Anxiety, hypnosis, media, and the controls that are happening there, because they don't want you to realize how much of what's going on is programming you.
Right. You look at the speeches from political speeches, and knowing just a little tiny bit that I know about the programming and marketing, it's like, oh, I recognize that. I see what she's doing right there, or what he's doing right there. It's amazing.
It is. I haven't had TV since 1997.
Good
so
for you.
When I see things, because you
It's
run
bonkers.
into TV sometimes. You're just like, what? I was at the airport, and there was a whole bunch of people waiting for the planes, and they had like a whole bunch of screens up, and there was some news program running, and
News.
yeah, exactly, editorializing, and I couldn't help myself. I got up, I went to the bathroom, I came back, and I had to do it. There's like probably 75 people there, and I walk through, and I'm just like, fear, 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 buy shit, fear, fear, fear.
That's
And
pretty
most
much it.
people looked at me like I was crazy, but a couple of them started laughing because they got it.
No,
And
it's
that's what they
nuts.
do. They scare us. Oh, you feel bad, so now buy this to feel better.
Well, that's the number
Or
one
you
trick.
feel fat, buy this and look at this skinny person selling it to you. Or,
Exactly.
this macho guy that you want to be like selling it to you or whatever. And if I buy this razor, then I'm cool. And I got rid of TV. You're way ahead of me. I was like 2009. And now when I see it, especially the commercials, because if I do watch something now, like a show, I love film, I love movies, I love entertainment. I watch a lot of it, but I watch it on Netflix or I download it, or I don't watch commercials and I don't watch general programming. I don't watch the news. And now when you see it, it's like, holy shit. Yeah, what is going on here? Like the commercials. You remember when Saturday Night Live used to do they might still do. I haven't watched Saturday Night Live in 15 years either, but the spoof commercials where they would like do a spoof commercial on whatever, and it's just totally ridiculous. Now when I see actual real TV commercials from now, they resemble those, and I can't tell, like, is this a real thing, and does everyone else think this is ridiculous as I do? Like, I don't know.
No, they don't. They go and buy the shit.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like, more often than not, the commercials make me make a mental note of something I'll never buy. Because the commercial's so ridiculous. Then I see one that actually sells me on something or like interests me. But yeah, and the news programming and the magazines and all the things, I mean, the more scared we are and the more we feel like shit about ourselves and the more we feel inadequate or whatever, and we need something or someone to protect us or something to make us like, what we wish we were or whatever that we can acquire by giving someone money and they give us this magical thing, or more money. Like if we just had more money, we'd be cooler or more important, whatever. Like there's professionals behind the scenes. Like, and as someone who understands that stuff better than we do, you probably see it more drastically than we do. But there's no like, it's not willy-nilly, these advertisements and this marketing and this media. Like there are people that are super skilled with that stuff working for them, I would guess, in every aspect of it.
Yeah, and even if the person doing the ad isn't super skilled, because of the messages that they're constantly inundated with, it just seems like normal to do it that way. In fact, yesterday or today, I came across an ad for a car, and I actually posted it to Facebook because I was like, does anybody else see this, or is this just me seeing this? And there's this pretty blonde woman, and she gets in the car, and the wind is blowing in her face, and there's a fully black choir, not a single Caucasian person in the choir, singing to her as she's like floating in the car.
There's even gold glitter that flies out from behind her.
Yes. And I was like, is anybody else noticing like this is not necessarily the right message to be putting out there?
Wow.
It's all white privilege. To me, I looked at it and I said, wow, that is like white privilege, and nobody noticed that was the subconscious message that was being sent. And I work in subconscious messages.
Even in the film industry, like I never really noticed it for a long time, and now I do, that the black character is always not always, but generally pretty similar in personality and what they do, what they act, how they whatever. And the blonde woman is like in the leading role is 90% a man, and if the woman's a leading role, like her goal for the movie is generally like a love interest.
Right.
And because the man is what's gonna make her like. And even like Asian stereotyped characters and Indian stereotyped and in film, and they do it because it's what people are conditioned to see.
Yes.
And like it's both. Like they both facilitate it, and it's a result of stereotypes. Because if they made a film and the white character acted like the quote black character should act, and the Asian character acted like the whatever, like it would confuse people because our stereotypes are so strong. Yeah. And our programming is so strong that our like subconscious would like reject what we were seeing.
And that's what they do. Like a lot of times, really bad comedy will do that. They'll cross those stereotypes just because it's almost startling to see a different. If you see an Asian person do something that if a white person did it wouldn't even be funny. It's just because they put it in a different package that.
Like taking pictures.
Right.
Like that's one of those things. Like in the movies, the Asian person is always taking pictures, or and it's just and it's funny because like that subconscious, like it's astronomically more powerful than people realize that it is.
Somewhere along the line, someone figured out that fear was the biggest trigger and just ran with it.
It's the easiest trigger. It is the easiest trigger.
To get people to take action.
Yes, it is absolutely the easiest trigger because it instigates that fight or flight response. And I would say for anybody who's listening this far in and is doubting what we're saying, go get a copy of White Man's Burden and just watch the first 15 minutes at least and ask yourself if that seems unusual, interesting, scary, unbelievable, because what they did brilliantly in that film is they switched everything. The white guy is the poor guy, and the black people are the rich people, and the conversations that they're having at the table and the way that they're talking about each other across those lines, you're just like, whoa. I would really recommend. Yeah, White Man's Burden, John Travolta and Harry Belafonte.
I've never heard of that or seen it. I would like to watch that.
You don't have to watch the whole thing to get what I'm saying, but
I probably will. I love movies, and rarely do I come across one that is worth watching that I haven't already seen. I used to own like 600 movies, and almost went to film school where I would have learned to manipulate people. But anyways, we're at an hour. We gotta cut this out, or we're gonna keep you here all day. I'm sure that you've got other things to do than talk to us. But yeah, it's super fun. Thank you so much, and we definitely want to have you back.
Yeah, for folks listening who want to kind of get started or really intrigued by the topic of hypnosis, meditation, they could find you at chelhamilton.com. Is that the best place to find you?
Yeah, and pretty much any way you spell it, it should still take you to the right site.
Oh, good to know. So if they spell it like seashell, it'll still go there?
Yeah, it's still.
Cool.
I was smart enough years ago. I just snagged up all the versions.
Awesome.
That is preemptive. Preemptive. We do a lot of that too, because we're always like, who's going to ask what question, or how is somebody going to do something wrong, and you try to preemptively like stop all of that. That's brilliant.
Yeah, very cool. And so someone will, particularly people coming in from this health realm, maybe they're looking at this as another tool for them to use. Where should someone kind of get started? Should they just listen to your podcast, go to your website? Like, where's a good place for someone to get started using hypnotherapy as a tool to help them just be better?
I would say the podcast is a great place to start, which you can find it either by searching Meditation Minis. It is available on Spotify, or going to chelhamilton.com. I also have a little ebook on the front page of my site. That's going to change, so grab it now while you can. And it's called Rewire It, and it teaches 3 simple steps that you can use yourself without going into any kind of hypnotic trance to begin to rewire the process in your brain from that default negative thinking to a more positive mind state. The more we stay in fear and anxiety, the less positive results we can create in our lives and the more easy we are to control from the outside. So my focus really is about helping people remove those things so that we can choose who we choose to be more easily and effortlessly and enjoyably.
And you have some webinars too that you
Yes, I will be doing. I do some free webinars. I just started those this year, and I'm going to start up again this month. So,
nice. I love webinars.
Different topics. I don't know yet. We'll just,
okay,
turn it on and go.
Excellent. Very good. Chel Hamilton, however you want to spell it, you'll find it, and we'll put it in the show notes. The correct spelling, of course, in the show notes. Chel, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks
guys,
a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Michael. It was awesome to be here today. Thanks for getting up early for me.
Yeah, not me. I'm on the East Coast. It's easy for me. All right. Thank you. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye, guys.